This is hotel playoff. We got the penthouse, teams that we feel great about that more or less control their own destiny. We got the lobby, teams that also may control their own destiny, but we want to see them clear a few hurdles before we put them into the penthouse when it comes to this whole college football playoff discussion. You got the teams that need a reservation. Doesn't mean that they're out of it, but it does mean they got some groundwork ahead of them. They got to make sure they get after it. And then you got the G5 party. The G5 party this week, very slim. Very slim. At first, that party had a lot of folks there. It was a packed house. However, now it is becoming increasingly more of a difficult party to get invited to, kind of exclusive. So let's start in the penthouse. Again, these are the teams that we feel really freaking good about right now when it comes to their aspirations to make the college football playoff. We'll start with the number one team in America, number one team in last night's rankings, number one team in pretty much every poll that you check, and that is the Oregon Ducks. Here's the thing that I think is important to note about them. Where's their weakness? Like, what's the one area for Oregon where you say, if they get in a game where they have to play great pass defense, or they get in a game where they have to play great in the trenches, like, you're not saying that. You're looking up and down this roster and you're saying, okay, at pretty much every position, I feel relatively confident that Oregon can at least hang with whoever they end up playing. Now, are they going to be dominant? Remains to be seen. But you feel really good about the level of caliber of player that you have across this roster at any given position. I'll also say this. I love, with every fiber of my being, the experience factor for Oregon. A lot of dudes with a lot of football under their belt. That matters. We've seen across the previous college football playoffs, even in the 4-team model, experienced teams have the steady hand, and they win big in the high-stakes scenarios, whether it be conference title games or college football playoff games. That's going to matter for Oregon. There is not one spot on this roster that you can point to and say, yeah, well, that true freshman's got a ball for them to have a chance. No, you're not saying that. You're not saying that because it's not there. Oregon, obviously, in the penthouse. College football sickos, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Talking ball, nothing but ball, year-round. We appreciate you in advance for being dialed in and for being subscribed. Ohio State, number 2 last night in the rankings. With the way the bracket shakes out, they would, by that logic, be the number 5 seed in the college football playoff. Listen, their only blemish on the schedule here is you got a 1-point loss at the number 1 ranked team in America as of right now. If we want to argue about it, we can. I appreciate the most for Ohio State. In the game against Penn State, things were far from perfect when it comes to circumstances. Your offensive line, I mean, you're playing musical chairs up there and drawing straws for who's going to start where. You got guys making their first starts at pretty critical positions on the offensive line for the first time in their life. Oh, by the way, you're on the road against a top 5 opponent, a team that wants with every piece of their soul to beat you because they haven't in a long time. You also have a quarterback now, to add fuel to the fire here, that did not play his best game. Will Howard actually, after the game, said, I think that was the worst football game I've played this year. Had the fumble out of the back of the end zone, had the pick 6 to get the party started for Penn State. And even with all those things being said, Ohio State won by a touchdown. I think they could have won by a whole lot more. Like, I'm looking at that game and saying it probably would have, should have, could have been 27-6. If Will Howard doesn't fumble out the back of the end zone, and if Will Howard doesn't throw a pick to spot Penn State their only touchdown of the day. The defense was just chilling out, playing man coverage until they felt like not playing man coverage. Ohio State still has better players than the majority of college football. If you thought Penn State was creeping up on them, I don't think you were wrong to have that take, but I also think we were proven in that game, like Ohio State still has more dudes than just about everyone else in the Big Ten, right up there with Oregon. Georgia at number 3. In last night's rankings. We still have them in the penthouse. I trust the roster. I've said that many times. I think you look at this team on paper and, like, there's not a lot left to be desired. Okay, great. The trenches starting to get healthy again. You feel good about that running back room when they're healthy, and true freshman Nate Frazier's been an absolute dog for them, no pun intended. You feel good about a lot of spots on this roster. The thing that gives you some pause about Georgia is the way that they have played as of late. More specifically, the way they have executed or not executed as of late. The thing that I love about Georgia, though, and the thing that I think is important to note with them in relation to this college football playoff conversation, Georgia may have the greatest potential energy out of anyone in the country. What I mean by that is potential energy is essentially what an object could eventually become or could eventually do. The best example of this is like when you have a big old boulder sitting at the edge of a cliff. If that boulder gets just pushed a little bit over the edge, it's going to be an unstoppable force. I feel the same way about Georgia. If Carson Beck just gets the proper push, if you will, and stops turning the football over, Georgia is going to be that boulder headed downhill. If they bring that physical edge every single week, they have the potential energy, I think, to beat anyone in America. We saw that when they went to Texas and beat the then number one ranked team in America by 2 scores. So Georgia, for us, very much so, still in the penthouse. Great one this week now. Great one this week against Ole Miss. That game preview and prediction is actually already on the On3 YouTube channel. Miami, they are ranked number 4 in the college football playoff rankings as of last night. Would have been seeded 3, neither here nor there. They're in the penthouse for us, and we've been us and the committee actually aligned quite a bit last night on how we felt about Georgia, or how we felt about Miami. Only have games at Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and at Syracuse left. Show me the loss there for Miami. Barring Miami having some sort of major letdown, I don't see it. Cam Ward is really, really good, and he is going to be good enough, I think, to JanSport Miami to at least the college football playoff, probably an ACC championship as well within that, and I feel really good about where Miami is trending. Now, trending is the important word there. Miami has had multiple spots now. Really, since Florida, you have not seen them play a complete football game against a Power 4 opponent. Does that bite them? Again, I think they're going to hopefully lock in a little bit more here as we get to November and then realize what's in front of them. But speaking to what we said about with Georgia, with Miami, the potential energy of Miami, I think, is also very, very high, but we've seen a little bit more variance from them. So with the schedule they have and with how they have played to this point in the year, I think you would be very, very wrong if you did not have them in your own playoff penthouse with them being undefeated. Texas, they were ranked 5 last night. Again, this is not our rankings. I'm just kind of adding some context to what happened last night in relation to our playoff penthouse. It is very wild to me a little bit how much the volume has been turned down on Texas. And we said it last week in this segment, but I want to say it again. What about Texas changed drastically since the Georgia loss? Like, what about them was true before that game that we somehow now believe is not true? Well, maybe Quinn Ewers isn't as good as we thought. Okay, I mean, I guess I could see where that take is coming from, but I would also point back to the game against Alabama. I'd point back to how he was playing early on in the season. Like, was he not his best against Georgia? Sure. Does that one data point disprove everything that we've thought to be true about Quinn Ewers going into this season? There was a point in time during this year where we're like, yeah, he's a Heisman Trophy contender. And I get he missed some games, but like I don't think that Texas is somehow a team we should just write off here because they had one bad showing at the crib against a really good Georgia team. And then the Vanderbilt game was a little bit closer than you would like. Still, top 25 Vandy. I think Vandy's a lot better than people would give credit for. So Texas, the narrative's up and down. I understand that, but I still think they're one of the best teams in college football. I'd be surprised if they weren't there at the end in the college football playoff. Indiana. Last night kind of felt like the committee saying, all right, Indiana, we see you. Because, again, they were ranked ahead of BYU, who, just to be real here, has a better resume on paper than what Indiana brings to the table. Indiana, so far, no top 25 wins. Okay, it is what it is, but they have beat everybody by over 2 scores. So the committee is saying, hey, we see what you're doing. Keep it up. Good to have you in this top 12 at this point. I think Indiana, honestly, if they just look solid against Ohio State, they're in the college football playoff. Just look solid. Just don't get blown out. I'd be surprised, quite frankly, if Indiana were to get blown out by Ohio State. But it is what it is. We get to see them against Ohio State here in the not-too-distant future. Now, a team that's already played Ohio State, they did lose, but I still think you got to give them some credit. It's Penn State. They're also in the playoff penthouse this week. Their only loss is to the number 2 team in college football by a touchdown. Now, I just told you, I think that margin of victory for Ohio State could have been a little bit more. The frustrating thing if you're Penn State is you feel like you probably went home with some bullets in the chamber. And, like, that can't be the way that you live when you play some of these top-tier teams in college football, much less in your conference. Like, you can't get down to the red zone on 2 separate occasions and come out with 0 points. Like, that's not winning football. I know it. You know it. Andy Koltanecki knows it. And I have to believe now, as much as that game hurts, Penn State still should really run the table the rest of the way and be 11-1. We'll talk about what happens in the Big Ten title game when it gets here as it pertains to who ends up making that game in Lucas Oil. But I think that big game experience for Andy Koltanecki, to be able to get a rep at that and say, okay, here's what I would do differently given the opportunity again, there will be more opportunities for Penn State. They will have another chance, maybe not at Ohio State, but at someone of a similar caliber when it comes time for the college football playoff. I cannot wait for it. because I think they'll be better for it, and I think they will swing their sword in a more emphatic fashion when that time does come. So that's who we have in the penthouse as of right now. These are the teams we have in the lobby. Now, the lobby is not a bad place to be. If you're in the lobby, you're in the hotel. All right, you're within striking distance. A lot of these teams, I would say, still very much so control their own destiny, if not all these teams. However, need to clear some hurdles, right? Need to clear some hurdles. Tennessee, I was really close to putting them in the penthouse, quite frankly, because with where they were ranked last night, the committee was saying, hey, we love the eye test for Tennessee. We love the way you're trending. We value the wins that you have right now over Oklahoma when you got it, over Alabama, obviously, when you got it, and the way that's aged. I think with that ranking, if I'm a Tennessee fan, I'm curious how much margin for error I have, because we still play Georgia. And okay, that game will be what it is. I'm sure it'll be a tremendous battle. But like, if you were to drop that game to Georgia, how far do you fall? Now, you don't want to find out. That's the first part. And I think if I'm a Tennessee fan or if I'm on that team at Tennessee, I'm saying, okay, they think this of us with how high they ranked us within the top 10. And we honestly haven't even really played our best football yet. Like, we sit in here every single Sunday and we're like, man, Tennessee won, but y'all, they're so close. A play here, a play there, a block here, Nico connecting downfield there. Like, they are very close now to, I think, finding their stride. It's discouraging because you haven't hit your stride yet, but it's encouraging because you haven't hit your stride, you're ranked in the top 10, and your best ball ideally is still in front of you with some of your most important ball still in front of you. So Tennessee, if you want to put them in the penthouse, I wouldn't fight back super hard. I want to see that Georgia game and get a good gauge for them before we make that move. Notre Dame. Now, you put them in the lobby right now because of the loss to NIU, but there's, I think it's Kelly Clarkson who's got a song, What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger. I won't sing it because it'll sound too much like the real thing, and YouTube will probably pick it up and copyright us. That's kind of vocals we're working with here. But what I will say is that's kind of the deal for Notre Dame right now. They were number 10 last night. And yeah, the NIU loss, it sucked. I'm sure it was a dark few days out there in South Bend, Indiana. But Notre Dame's right there. Notre Dame, quite frankly, I believe, controls their own destiny. And Notre Dame now, if you look at the path ahead of them, they could very realistically finish, if you're freezing those wins when they got them, with 4 ranked wins. Texas A&M, that win, for the most part, continues to age well. The win over Louisville, I believe that was a top 15, top 20 win when you got it. The Navy win, that was a ranked win, definitively a ranked win. And then you imagine Army will be ranked when you play them, and if you beat Army, again, that's your 4th ranked win on the season. So the NIU loss is a black eye. It's embarrassing. I totally get that. However, Notre Dame now, if you go 11-1 with 4 ranked wins, then keep your conference title game. We'll chill at home. We'll have some Funyuns. We'll watch y'all beat each other up, and then we'll draw who we draw in that first round of the college football playoff. Let's get after it. So the Irish, don't look now, in the lobby, and very much so in the mix. Now, I went back and forth on where to put Clemson because they have 2 losses now. They probably have to win the ACC to make the college football playoff. The Louisville game was an absolute gut punch, not just because it was a loss and because you lost at home. It was because of the way that you lost. It was because it wasn't even, quite frankly, all that competitive. And so with how much the committee values the eye test, I worry about Clemson having 2 blowout losses and somehow finding a way with an at-large bid. I don't think that's going to happen. I know it was Georgia. I know it was game 1. I get it, but y'all, it still counts. And the Louisville game was just kind of an extra punch to the gut there. So it's only 1 loss in conference play. Clemson very much so could still make and win the ACC, but I think that's their only path. So right now, having the lobby could probably put them in the needed reservation space, but we'll go ahead and have them in the lobby until further notice because of what they did in between those 2 games, right? We still saw a lot of good from Clemson, and the path is still very much so still there. BYU, saying, JD, you got BYU in the lobby? You not see us last night be ranked number 9 in the college football playoff rankings? I mean, if we went out, hey, we're probably, I assume, going to have a first-round bye in the college football playoff. You have us in the lobby? We said this last week. I don't trust you. I wish I could. I would love to trust you. I'm a trusting guy. I feel like I'm an optimistic guy. But y'all, BYU, you have done so much to make me not trust you. The Oklahoma State game is what I keep going back to. Oklahoma State's not all that good. Maybe I'm being harsh here, but it is what it is. That was a close game. 3-point game. And Oklahoma State now is it's not trending as the best win overall, if you will. I don't mean to harp on 1 win, but you hear what I'm saying. Now, you do have the 2 top 25 wins. That's great. The SMU win, awesome. Kansas State win, awesome. But you've been so up and down. And it's not just me that has an issue with it. It's the committee that has an issue with it. They're telling you, hey, BYU, we don't think that much of your conference. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Also, we don't think that much of what you've done to this point in the season. The eye test, it leaves something to be desired here. So for BYU, they're in the lobby. They control their own destiny, win the Big 12 undefeated, enjoy that first round bye. However, if you lose a game, I don't think you feel all that great about your chances, not just to win the Big 12, but to have that bye the first round of the college football playoff. We'll see how that ages, but that's how I feel. SMU in the ACC, man, number 13 last night. Have a loss? Yeah, it lost to BYU. That's why I would say if you were ranking the teams in the lobby, BYU would be ahead of SMU. No way around it. But undefeated in the ACC, absolutely dismantled Pitt. That was ridiculous. Everything is right there in front of them. The catch for me here, the reason why I don't have SMU in the penthouse is because they can't lose again. I mean, even in the ACC title game, I think if they were to lose to a Miami, I think they'd probably be out of the dance, unfortunately. But still, SMU, there's a will, there's a way, there's a path. Go win the ACC, leave no doubt, and vibes will be tremendous out there in Dallas. One more team to talk about here, Texas A&M. You're in the lobby. You control your own destiny. The loss to South Carolina sucks. It sucks even more that Le'Veon Moss and his injury is brutal. Like I said, still in control. The issue I have here is Le'Veon Moss and what he brings to the table. In a lot of ways, he was, to me at least, the identity of how Texas A&M played offensively. Like, they are 62% of the time run the football team, and now you will be without your best player on offense. So can you account for that? Can you shapeshift a little bit here? Can you get more from Amari Daniels? Can you get more from Marcel Reed? Can you get more from the pass game? Like, what does it look like for you to make up for that level of production that's lost? And also, quite frankly, just what he was overall as a game breaker for you. Like, who's your go-to guy now when it's 4th and 1? We got to pick up a first down. I think the play call changes a little bit from, hey, let's get the ball to 8 to, okay, what do we like here? What's our method of attack? So A&M still very much so in control. Like I mentioned, you got to go beat Auburn at Auburn. You got to go beat Texas in College Station. So we'll see what happens there. It's all right in front of them. But the loss of Le'Veon Moss is heartbreaking for all college football fans and a massive, massive blow to what Texas A&M does offensively. All right, so here are the teams that need a reservation. And typically we go team by team here, but I want to talk about two teams at the same time right now because they play this week. LSU and Bama. Now, I'm not concerned about where either team is ranked. I get Bama was ahead of LSU. It is what it is. Bama-LSU means so much to so many people regardless of playoff implications. You just go on and add the fact now that it is a playoff game. Like, the loser of this does not make the college football playoff. The winner of that game, in my estimation, is not just in the lobby. Like, you don't just go up a level in hotel playoff. I think you go up to the penthouse because look at the path for both of these teams if they were to win the game. If LSU beats Bama, you got a game at Florida, and we're going to see what the health level of a DJ Lagway is going forward. But let's just go ahead and assume that for whatever reason he's not full go. You could play a third-string quarterback. Okay, that is already probably a game that LSU's favored in, but if DJ Lagway isn't full go or not able to go at all, again, we'll see what happens there. That'd be a very big advantage for LSU. Vanderbilt, you play them, be feisty, but you get them in Baton Rouge. Oklahoma, they are a world of question marks right now. That would be a game that you'd be favored in. So the path is very much so there if you're LSU, if you beat Bama to finish 10-2 and to be right there in the college football playoff, in my opinion. Same deal for Alabama. You play Mercer, okay? Then you go to Oklahoma, and you play Auburn. Now, the great part for Alabama fans, you get Auburn in Tuscaloosa. You don't got to go to Jordan-Hare and deal with all that voodoo. Like, you get them at the crib. Again, 10-2 Bama. Based on what they said last night, according to the committee, they should be in the college football playoff. So the path is very much so clear for both these operations if and when they beat the other. So we'll see what happens there. Ole Miss, man, they can springboard, I think, into the penthouse with a win over Georgia. The path left for them, if they were to beat Georgia, would be at Florida, Mississippi State. Again, I don't want to speak too authoritatively on what's going on with the quarterback situation at Florida because I'm sure that will change as soon as we get off the air. The bottom line is you should be favored at Florida. You should beat Mississippi State. I know it's the Egg Bowl. I know it's weird. You should beat Mississippi State. So if you can beat Georgia, be 10-2, again, maybe you find yourself in the penthouse. Have a win over a number 3 ranked team and have other wins on your resume that probably are aging better than when you got them. Like the game at South Carolina, I think, is one that's going to age well for them. I expect South Carolina, if they keep winning, to be ranked next week. So we'll see what happens there. But for Ole Miss, definitely a path, and it feels a lot more optimistic than it probably did a couple of weeks ago. Iowa State, need a reservation, lost Texas Tech. The Big 12 is just nuts. Like, they still have to play Kansas State. They are currently tied with another team right now that needs a reservation, and that is a team that was number 20 last night in the college football playoff rankings. That was Colorado. So these two were tied. I have no idea what the tiebreaker situation would look like if both went out. I think there's other things that will play into that. I want to say this about Colorado. Iowa State, great, handle business. The Big 12 is nuts. You lost to Texas Tech. You got to beat Kansas State. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Colorado, that was a landmark moment last night, if you ask me. Because we said this a couple weeks ago, I'll say it again. Colorado is not just a good story. They're not. It was fun at first when Deion Sanders got there. They won a few games. They tail off at the end of last year. Everyone, including myself, is asking questions about who they are, what they're going to be going forward. Can they take another step forward with another portal class? The answer is emphatically yes. The answer is they are tied for second in the Big 12 right now with one conference loss. They don't have to deal with that tiebreaker with Kansas State if they keep winning out, because Kansas State, unfortunately for the good folks out there in Manhattan, Kansas, lost this past weekend again to a Big 12 opponent in Houston. So, like, Colorado, it's all right there in front of them. They're not just, like, a fun thing to talk about. No, good for Deion Sanders and what he's doing out there. Like, they're legitimately a team you have to talk about now in the Big 12 title race, and by that logic, in the college football playoff race. Colorado now has games at Texas Tech. This week will be huge. You got Utah, got to go to Kansas, you got Oklahoma State. Will any of those be layups? I don't expect that. Are all those winnable? You better believe it. You better believe it. One more team that needs a reservation right now. I almost put them in the G5 party because the G5 party is looking a little bit slim. But actually, we can't put them in the G5 party because they're not a G5 team. That's Washington State. Washington State would actually be better served if they were in a G5 team, or a G5 conference, rather. They're playing a Mountain West schedule, but for Washington State, they only have one loss to Boise State, but they have to find a way to push themselves up to number 11 or higher in the college football playoff rankings because of the fact they're not in a conference recognized from the college football playoff that would allow them to have an auto bid. So that they're not in that G5 discussion. They have to, like Notre Dame, be ranked within the top 12, top 11 probably is more likely, and that's a way they could get in. All right, so Washington State, hope is still alive, but I don't think it's all that likely. But still, that's why you need a reservation. Get out the Expedia, get out the Marriott points, whatever you got to do to find your way into the college football playoff penthouse, or just hotel playoff in general. All right. G5 party. Waka Flocka's got a great song, Grove Street Party. I think he also hosts the G5 party, so we appreciate Waka Flocka doing that for us. Boise State, right now they got the belt. They got the belt. Based on last night, there's a path where they could even finish higher than number 12. Like, if they win out and maybe some madness happens across the Big 12, we'll talk about that later. Who's to say Boise State doesn't find themselves at number 11? And then maybe Boise State is the fourth highest conference champion. And maybe they have a bye the first round of the college football playoff. A lot of ifs, a lot of potentials, but still, that's where Boise State is right now. That's what they have earned at this point in the season. Now, one more team in the G5. Again, I told you it's a slim group this week. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Army's at number 25 this week in the college football playoff rankings. Army's undefeated. Now, I think Army, if they were to beat Notre Dame, could probably skyrocket up the rankings, but I am a little bit concerned that they're only at 25 and have that much ground to cover, and how much of a, I guess, head start or a lead, if you want to call it that Boise State has ahead of them. So if Army, again, if they, hopefully Navy is who you draw in the conference title game and they're ranked high, or someone else in the American Athletic, hopefully whoever you play in the American Athletic Conference title game is ranked as high as possible when you get to pocket that win. But I don't feel incredible about Army's chances as of right now. Not saying it can't happen. You beat Notre Dame, this whole conversation changes, but right now, Boise State comfortably in the lead for the G5 party, and we'll see how this thing ages in a few weeks. I'm sure it'll be absolutely useless, this whole discussion we just had, because of how crazy college football is, but nonetheless, that's why they play the games. That's why they play the games. So let's recap it for you here. In the penthouse, teams we feel great about as of right now: the Oregon Ducks, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Indiana, and Penn State rounds out the penthouse and hotel playoff. In the lobby, still got a chance. Need to make some moves, though, to really solidify your spot in playoff penthouse. But we got Tennessee, Notre Dame. Clemson is hanging in there, probably at the end of the lobby, but they're still in there. BYU and SMU, as well as Texas A&M, all hanging out in the lobby. Who needs a reservation? Well, LSU Bama is going to give us a good gauge for who has a chance to keep their hopes alive for a reservation for the college football playoff this weekend. They are both in the need a reservation sector this week. Ole Miss also hanging in there. They play Georgia. That'll tell us a lot. Iowa State and Colorado. Again, I don't even know what the Big 12 tiebreaker exactly reads like. I'm sure we'll learn in the next couple of weeks. Madness. Both are in the reservation space right now with their college football playoff hopes alive. Wazoo just hanging in there. Hanging in there. It would be a Cinderella story, truly, if they were to make the college football playoff, but only one loss. And if you want to talk about a good loss, it was by a fair margin, but it was still to Boise State, which is a top 12 loss at this point in time. Speaking of Boise State, them and Army are hanging out in the G5 party with Boise State. They're on the aux, if you will, at the G5 party. Right? They're controlling the vibes. It's their Waka Flocka's hosting it, allegedly, by how that graphic's set up. But Boise State's in control of that party and will continue to be in control until further notice.